Number 10. Bones, explosives, and locomotives. Dan Lopez is a Vernon, New Jersey-based modern-day explorer who has visited at least 179 abandoned mines and entered 50 or more throughout the northeastern U.S. Throughout his adventures, he's experienced an array of shocking and disturbing sights, including dynamite, bones, and even a ghost. Since 2003, Lopez has ventured into mines with other explorers too, who have traveled deep into forests and down deep shafts to find things like abandoned rail tracks, coal carts, and a rusting 19th century locomotive left frozen in time. According to a 2018 NorthJersey.com article documenting his investigations, one time Lopez almost fell into a crevice and to his death. Lopez also entered a mine in one town and amazingly emerged in another. His passion for mines is fueling an ongoing campaign to bring attention to their historic value, which he says the government seems intent on burying, both literally and figuratively, as sites are increasingly being reclaimed and filled in. Thankfully, Lopez has documented these eerie, forgotten sites through his photography, which can be found on his Flickr page. Number 9. Demonic Whispers. In 2016, while exploring the tunnels of a place called the Waldeck Mine, a YouTuber who goes by the name of Frank captured footage of a series of unexplainable overlapping whispers that he at first thought were birds or snakes. As soon as the man realized he was hearing something that was perhaps not of this world, he quickly turned around and hightailed it back toward the mine's entrance. The disturbing video appeared on the YouTube channel Exploring Abandoned Mines and has garnered over 6 million views since its debut 6 years ago. While many were shocked by what they heard when they watched the footage, CNET was quick to point out that the channel's profile page included a disclaimer stating, "Everything you see, hear, and read in all my videos is for entertainment purposes only, and should not be relied upon or construed as factual, correct, or remotely accurate." Whether the video is real or not, and regardless of where it was filmed, it's certainly enough to make anyone think twice about venturing into an abandoned mine. Number 8. Clerksdorp Spheres. The Clerksdorp spheres are small, round, and disc-shaped objects that were collected from pyrophyllite mines near Ottosdal, South Africa. They range in diameter from 0.2 inches to almost 4 inches, 0.5 to 10 centimeters, and are composed of either hematite or wollastonite, mixed with small amounts of hematite and goethite, and in some cases pyrite. Since their discovery, the Clerksdorp sphere's origins have been heavily debated by experts and conspiracy theorists alike. Experts concluded that the objects are around 2.8 billion years old and were formed naturally by minerals occupying the space between sediments, much like how crystals are formed, and that their round shape and evenly spaced lines were caused by weathering. Conspiracy theorists, on the other hand, argue that the stones are too perfectly round to have formed naturally, and that they're evidence of ancient aliens having existed. Another bizarre story surrounding the Clerksdorp spheres claims that a man brought some of them to NASA for scientists to examine, and that they told him the balls were formed in a zero-gravity environment. Not surprisingly, there's no reliable evidence to back up these far-flung tales and theories, and researchers who analyzed the spheres disproved outlandish claims of them having perfect balance or being harder than steel. Still, the spheres are fascinating in their own right due to their age, and especially because they truly do seem too perfectly round to be anything but man-made. Number 7. Mystery Monster. In 2016, in the Sakha Republic of far northeastern Russia, Siberian miners unearthed the demonic-looking mummified corpse of a small, unidentified animal. Even those who drew the more reasonable conclusion that it was actually a creature of this earth were puzzled about what exactly it was. The miners who worked at the Udakni diamond mine suggested that the so-called monster mummy was a newly discovered dinosaur species. Meanwhile, experts erred on the more rational side and surmised that it was a young wolverine. They drew this conclusion based on its strong jaws and large canine teeth, which are characteristic of the species, but pointed out that the creature could also be a sable or a ferret-like animal called a pine marten. The remains were transported to Yakutsk for further examination, but one expert named Darian Basinger claimed that she knew what the carcass was just by looking at it. Speaking to Earth Touch News, Basinger, who's worked with mummified remains for years, explained that the animal looked like a Russian fitch, also known as a polecat, which is actually not a cat. This falls in line with other experts' belief that the creature comes from the mustelid family of weasels, ferrets, minks, and martens. Basinger further added that the corpse dried out instead of liquefying because of the region's frigid temperatures, and that the dead body was probably relatively new since the mine has been open for decades. But she admits that without properly analyzing the animal, she could be wrong about its identity. Number 6. Van Meter Creature. Over the course of just a few days back in 1903, the small Iowa town of Van Meter was allegedly terrorized by a stinky half-human, half-animal monster, which had bat wings and a horn emanating a blinding light. It became known as the Van Meter creature or the Van Meter visitor. It emerged from a local mine and spent its first night flying across rooftops. It seemed immune to the gunshots that townsfolk repeatedly fired anytime they saw it. The local doctor and bank teller managed to get a poster cast of the monster's three-toed tracks, and another resident described the creature as hopping like a kangaroo. It was also spotted perched atop a telephone pole. Eventually, locals chased the unwelcome visitor back to the mine, where they heard a demonic sound coming from within. A bright light appeared, and the creature appeared with a smaller version of itself, and they descended down a mine shaft together. Nobody ever saw the Van Meter creature again, and for over a century, the mystery surrounding the bizarre incident has lingered. No evidence was ever found to suggest that the ordeal was a hoax, but tangible signs of the Van Meter creature being real are also conspicuously lacking. Number 5. The Saltmen of Iran. 1700 years ago, around 300 AD, a group of men were working together in a mine in what is now Iran when the roof collapsed and crushed them to death. None of them were discovered until 1993, when miners at the Cherabad salt mine in Zanjan province found the first body belonging to a man with long, flowing white hair and sporting a gold earring. His remnants didn't look nearly as old as radiocarbon dating proved them to be, leading experts to believe that the dryness of the environment helped to preserve his body while the surrounding salt sucked moisture from his skin. In other words, the man was naturally mummified. 5 more saltmen, as they've become known, have been found since. The second mummy was discovered just 50 feet away from the first in 2004, and in 2005, 2 more were found. The last 2, one of which is actually a woman, were discovered in 2007. Mining practices were stopped at the site in 2008, and it was declared an archaeological site, making it available to researchers. Experts have learned a lot from the mummies, some of whom were so well preserved their internal organs remained intact. One man's stomach contained tapeworm eggs, showing that he ate lots of raw and undercooked meat. Other artifacts were also remarkably well preserved thanks to the salt, including a leather boot containing a foot, iron knives, a pant leg, a silver needle, a sling, leather rope, pottery shards, textile fragments, a walnut, and more. 4 of the 6 mummies found are currently on display in the positions they were found in at the Archaeology Museum in Zanjan. Number 4. Redhaired Giants. Lovelock Cave is a small cavern in Churchill County, Nevada, measuring just 150 feet long by 35 feet wide. Humans first used the cave as far back as 2580 BC, and around 1000 BC, people began living in it full-time. Altogether, the human presence inside Lovelock Cave spans roughly 4,000 years. In 1911, 2 men named David Pugh and James Hart were at the site mining bat guano to use as fertilizer. While removing a thick layer of the material measuring somewhere between 3 and 6 feet deep and weighing an estimated 250 tons, 226.8 metric tons, the pair found a collection of artifacts. Unfortunately, they only kept the ones that they deemed to be interesting, and a lot of important archaeological information was likely lost in the process. Eventually, the duo stumbled upon too many objects to continue mining guano in substantial quantities. Their fascinating finds allegedly included the remains of a humongous 6-foot man with red hair. This gave rise to legends of a group of red-haired cannibalistic giants called the Siteka, who supposedly existed in the area centuries ago and stood at up to 10 feet, 3 meters tall. Modern science challenges these stories, citing how the pigment in human hair is unstable after death and can be changed by numerous factors, including temperature and soil content. A study on a collection of bones that was carried out during the mid-1970s determined that there was possibly a separate, more aggressive tribe that passed through the area and terrorized the Paiute, and that its members could have been around 6 feet, 1.8 meters tall on average, according to Nevadagram. As anthropologists pointed out, the myth is likely to bolster over the facts because it's simply more entertaining. Number 3. Dead miners and illicit villages. South African police recently announced the discovery of 20 dead bodies of suspected illegal miners near an abandoned gold mine shaft outside Johannesburg. The corpses were severely burned and wrapped in white plastic bags, according to authorities, who said that they're working to determine the causes of death. A police spokesman said that they believe the individuals were illegal miners that are commonly known as zama-zamas, which means try your luck in Zulu. At any given time, thousands of zama-zamas are operating in the country, with most working in Johannesburg, according to the South African Human Rights Commission, SAHRC. Typically run by crime syndicates, illegal mining is extremely dangerous. Those who dare or are desperate enough to do it run the risk of being hurt or dying from explosives, toxic fume inhalation, collapsing mine shafts, and gang violence, The Guardian reported. There's no shortage of places for them to operate in, with derelict mines numbering around 6,000. Even more shocking, the people who work in these mines spend up to 6 months at a time underground, living in small makeshift cities, where commodities like food, alcohol, cell phone minutes, and sex are sold at wildly inflated prices. Number 2. Ice Age Mining Camp. Between 12,000 and 10,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, indigenous miners in what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula risked their lives to mine a pigment called red ochre, traveling deep into pitch-dark caves to retrieve it. As glaciers melted and sea levels rose, these caves became filled with water and were forgotten about. In 2017, cave divers explored these impressively well-preserved remnants that the miners left behind, including charcoal from fires that were lit to provide light, stone tools, mining pits, and the red ochre pigment itself. Researchers have long known that the region's earliest human inhabitants ventured into the now submerged caves in the area, known as Quintana Roo, as evidenced by skeletons that have been recovered from there. Until recently, however, nobody knew exactly why people went into the caves. They noticed unexplainable signs of a human presence, including rocks that were out of place and stacked on top of one another, according to study co-author Samuel McComb, who spoke with Live Science. Nobody knows what ancient indigenous people used red ochre for. The samples found at the site contain high levels of arsenic, suggesting the possibility that they were used as a bug repellent. It may have also been used as an antiseptic or sunblock. Red ochre likely had ritualistic uses as well, including in rock paintings and burials. But for now, its purposes remain a mystery. Number 1. Murder victims. 2 Utah families were shaken to the core when 17-year-old Berlene Breeze Otteson and 18-year-old Riley Powell disappeared just days after Christmas in 2017. Friends and family searched over 40 mines, but failed to find the missing teens. Months later, police found Otteson and Powell's bodies in Juab County, Utah. Both victims were bound, stabbed, and tossed at the bottom of an abandoned mine shaft. Outraged that his girlfriend Morgan Henderson had welcomed the young couple into their home, a man named Jared Baum allegedly committed the murders, killing Powell as his girlfriend watched, then fatally slitting her throat. Baum had reportedly warned Henderson against having male friends over and was furious that she disobeyed this rule, especially since she had briefly dated Powell in the past before the two ultimately decided they were better off as friends. Henderson initially lied and told police she knew nothing of the young couple's whereabouts, but when she was pulled over at a later date and caught with the murder weapons, she confessed what she knew. Baum was charged with Powell and Otteson's murders. 3 years later, the teens' families are still waiting for justice amid the ongoing trial, and Henderson is a key witness in the proceedings. If convicted, Baum could face the death penalty. Thanks for watching.